Thanks for being with us this afternoon. A major midterm ahead for Kansas as voters will elect a new governor and every single lawmaker in Topeka. But the nation is watching the fight for congressional seats. Many experts say Congressman Kevin Yoder faces an uphill battle to keep his office, and whether he does could have an impact on which party controls the nation's capital. KCTV5's Emily Sinovic breaks down the battle happening right now for Johnson County.
Kansas's 3rd congressional district is a big deal. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has it on its list of targets for this midterm election. Incumbent Republican Kevin Yoder is up against Democrat Sharice Davids, who Democrats say could be one of the 24 Democrats they need to win and pick up that seat to get control of Congress. Yoder is seeking his 5th term. After his primary win, he told supporters he needs to go back to Capitol Hill to take care of unfinished business.
We need to support our schools. We need to make smart investments in things like medical research. We need to keep our promises to our seniors and veterans. We need to support our troops so they can keep our country safe. And we've got to finally fulfill the promise that leaders have been making for decades to secure our border once and for all.
Yoder really hasn't had much of a problem in previous elections, winning comfortably every time. But this year, Yoder's being tested in a district that can lean left. In the 2016 presidential election, Kansas's 3rd congressional district was the only one in Kansas and most of the Midwest to vote for Hillary Clinton, beating Trump by 1 point. Enter Sharice Davids, who's a credible threat to Yoder. Multiple polls show Davids leading Yoder by as many as 8 points. Beginning the day of her primary win, she's been telling voters she is the change they need.
I feel really excited about what's going on right now. We just have this just a massive influx of folks who are excited and ready to participate in this political process, and a lot of people who frankly are just ready for change. We're ready for progress, and we're ready for someone to be in Congress who's really going to represent the voice of the 3rd district.
She's targeting Yoder in campaign ads using voters who have voted for Yoder before.
I'm no longer voting for him.
Nope. This voter is not for Yoder.
But Yoder fights back with ads accusing Davids of being too radical on issues like health care and border security.
I'm nervous that Sharice Davids wants to put the government in charge of our health care decisions.
Sharice Davids wants to abolish ICE.
Davids' campaign has said she does not intend on abolishing ICE if elected. Earlier in the race, Yoder got some heavy-hitting endorsements. Vice President Mike Pence endorsed Yoder on a trip to KC at the end of July.
With the support of the conservative leaders from Missouri and Kansas, President Trump signed the largest tax cuts and tax reform in American history. That's promises made and promises kept.
President Trump also threw in his support with a tweet saying, "Yoder has my full endorsement." But more recently, the National Republican Congressional Committee, one of the funding sources for campaigns, has canceled more than $1 million in planned advertising for Yoder's campaign. Yoder still has funding from other GOP groups, but this may indicate a shift in momentum. President Trump has been stumping all over the country, including right here in Kansas and Missouri, for Republican candidates, hoping to dodge a historic precedent. You see, in midterm elections, the party in the White House typically takes the bigger hit during midterms. Democrats are trying to capitalize on that. Also, if you think 24 seats is a lot of ground to make up for Democrats, remember, it is possible. Back in 2010, Republicans picked up 63 seats. I'm Emily Sinovic, KCTV5 News.
Yoder and Davids also face competition from Libertarian candidate Chris Clemens. Republicans could also struggle to hold on to the 2nd congressional district seat, which is being vacated by Lynn Jenkins. It's Paul Davis for the Democrats up against Republican Steve Watkins, both of whom have seen their share of controversy. So joining us again now is Dr. Greg Vanami from UMKC. And let's start with the 3rd district race. That's the one that's getting so much attention from across the country. What's going on in this race? Because Sharice Davids has a pretty commanding lead right now in the polling at this point.
And that's an important point. Polls, especially at the state and district level, have not been as reliable as they have been historically, so it's worth taking all of this projection at this point with a grain of salt. That said, it looks like she has a fairly commanding lead, and Republican groups have withdrawn support from Kevin Yoder. They've shifted their attention away from District 3, and they're trying to focus on districts that they think have a better chance of holding to try and maintain their House majority.
What's going on in Kansas? And we were talking about this earlier before we started this broadcast about how Kansas is unique in the way that it votes, and there's almost like a three-party system in the way the state looks at it.
Historically, it hasn't been that unusual to have a group of moderate Republicans separate from more rural conservative Republicans, but in most other states, they've coalesced. Kansas is probably the last remaining state that still has that separation between conservative and moderate Republicans, most of which live in District 3.
And so if we take a look at that at face value, that might explain why Sharice Davids has so much momentum right now.
And that's what we see in the legislature. Sometimes those moderate Republicans align with the more conservative Republicans. Sometimes they align with the Democrats. So it makes it a somewhat more volatile district than most other districts we see around the country.
All right, another one that's gaining a lot of attention, the 2nd District. Let's talk about that for a moment. What do you see happening here?
That district looks like a toss-up. Paul Davis, who ran for governor in 2014, and what's normally a leaning Republican district, he won that district in his ultimately unsuccessful gubernatorial campaign in 2014. But he personally seems like a strong candidate for that district, also in an electoral context, which is favoring the Democrats, has made usually a pretty safe Republican hold a toss-up race.
Well, it is going to be so many of these races. I mean, I can sit there and go down the list and say, this looks interesting, this looks fascinating. But as we take a look at the ballots, both on Missouri and Kansas, and I think maybe that's why voter turnout may be higher than normal. The chance of that is just because so many of these races are so close, controversies involved in so many of these races, and it does have people talking.
That's right. And 10 years ago, nobody seriously thought the Democrats would be able to take control of the House of Representatives. Just because of the way the districts were drawn, they would probably need about a 55% nationwide majority to win a House majority. So it's very surprising to see us having this conversation where the Democrats could conceivably take control of the House.
That is really interesting. All right, Dr. Van Omni, thank you. We're going to check in with you in just a few minutes again.